Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CBT Nuggets, and this nugget is focused on the PMI ACP exam. In this nugget, we'll explore the requirements for and the format of the Agile Certified Practitioner exam. So if you've moved on and are taking this second nugget in the ACP series, I'm assuming that you are interested in taking your ACP. So therefore, probably the next most important thing to you is, what do I have to do to take and pass this exam so I get my ACP credentials? Well, number one, PMI have some predefined qualifications. PMI expects that you have some background, that you have some knowledge in Agile development. Unlike the PMP, the qualifications for the ACP are, I'm going to say, relatively light. You may take a bit of a gasp in a minute when you see what the qualifications really are, but compared to some of the other PMI certifications, the qualifications for the ACP are relatively light, and I would expect well within the reach of anyone interested in taking their ACP. But the expectation again is still there that you have gone through and have some experience in the trenches in project delivery and in Agile delivery. So assuming you pass all of the qualifications, you then go in and you submit your application, recognizing that you have to prove to PMI that you have all of the qualifications they expect, and be prepared that some of the applications will be audited, and you literally have to be able to provide proof, including names and addresses, to satisfy the audit requirements. But assuming your application is accepted, you will then go on and take the exam. So we'll examine the process, review the process for scheduling your exam, where you will take your exam, how you take the exam, and finally, most importantly in this particular nugget, we'll review the format of the exam so that there are no surprises, that you are prepared when you go in to take and pass your ACP exam. So what are these relatively light qualifications? And I hope after I finish this discussion you will agree with me that they are relatively light. PMI expects that you have some degree of formal education, but limits it that you have basically successfully passed high school or the appropriate equivalency in the area, in the country where you have taken your formal education. PMI expects that you have 2,000 hours of project management experience. Not agile experience, but independent project experience in any environment. Could be traditional environment, could be agile environment, could be any of the agile approaches, but that you have auditable 2,000 hours of project experience, and that you have completed this within the last 5 years. So what is 2,000 hours? If you do the math, 2,000 hours breaks down into 250 days, or breaks down into approximately 50 weeks, or give or take a year's worth of project delivery experience over a 5-year period. So again, the expectation is you've been around, you have some experience in the trenches, you've been there, you've done that. You're not brand new to the project delivery world. And in addition, and this is a plus, you cannot submit the same evidence for your 2,000 hours of project experience as the same 1,500 hours of direct Agile experience. So in reality, PMI is looking for 3,500 hours of project delivery experience, of which at least 1,500 hours are in a Agile world, and the other 2,000 hours can be in a normal traditional project environment. And they expect your Agile experience to be within the last 3 years. So what is 1,500 hours? Again, doing the math for you, 1,500 hours breaks down to approximately 190 days, or somewhere in the range of about 40 weeks of direct Agile experience. Does not mean you are an Agile project manager, but that you have Agile experience. You've participated in an Agile team in one form or another, as a developer, as a coach, as a business user, or as a project manager. And again, I want to emphasize, in total, they're looking for 3,500 hours, not 2,000 hours, and of which 1,500 are Agile. They are cumulative 3,500 hours in total, and I want to stress that because, again, you need to provide actual evidence of these hours. In June of 2009, I worked on this project and I got 500 hours. In September, I worked on this project and I got 600 hours of Agile experience. So you have to, on your application form, submit the details around where you have gathered your 2,000 hours of general project experience and your 1,500 hours of Agile experience. And I'm really focusing on this because the applications are reviewed. They are not simply processed by a machine and automatically approved. They are reviewed, and in a significant number of instances, they are audited. It's not audited based on how well you filled in the form. The audits are purely random, but a significant number of applications will go through an audit, in which case PMI is going to come back to you and say, hey, Steve, that project experience that you referenced in June of 2008, could you please provide me with a name, a phone number, an email address, some way to contact your supervisor, some way to contact another individual to validate that in fact in June of 2008 you worked on the project and you in fact got the 600 hours or whatever of experience that you have submitted. Now, one piece of good news per se, and this is good news more so for the effort of filling in the form, if you are an existing PMP, certified member of PMI, you do not have to provide the evidence of your 2,000 hours of project experience because you've already supplied to PMI as part of your PMP quals that you have in fact far exceeded the 2,000 hours of project experience. So if you are an existing PMP certified member of PMI, on your application, you need to provide your evidence of your PMP, and you then only have to provide the direct experience of where you've gathered your 1,500 hours of Agile experience. Details are absolutely required, and details are what's going to ensure that your application passes and that your audit will in fact pass if you are lucky enough or unlucky enough to be the random person selected for the audit. In addition to that, you need to supply evidence to PMI that you have got 21 hours of direct Agile training. And the good news is CBT Nuggets is a registered education provider, an REP, with PMI. So therefore, if you complete this entire Nugget series for your ACP preparation, you will in fact automatically have your 21 hours of Agile training, and therefore you can submit evidence of completing this Nugget series, being again CBT Nuggets is REP certified, so therefore you will automatically get credit for your 21 hours. And finally, as part of your qualifications, you need to agree to the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility. It is a formal signature, or electronic signature is appropriate, validating that you have reviewed the Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility and you agree to them. The good news is it is a very comprehensive document, but the good news is the Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility, at least in my humble opinion, are nothing different than what we need to do day in, day out, doing our jobs and being true professionals in IT delivery. So once you've convinced yourself that you have all of the qualifications, that you have the time, you have the 2,000 hours and you have the 1,500 hours and you have the 21 hours of training, it's time to submit your application. The application is typically submitted online at www.pmi.org, and from the point in time when you first start to fill in your application to you complete your application, you have 90 days. Now you may say, why so long? Again, it's to give you the time to go through and validate that in fact in June of 2008 I got 600 hours of experience in project delivery. Now, a lot of people will go through and pull together all of that material long before they ever go to PMI.org and start to complete the application. But assuming you start the application when you're not fully prepared, the good news is you have 90 days to go back and do your research and find out what you did in 2008 and 2009 and 2010, etc., so that you are submitting the details to PMI, again, validating where you have your experience, how the experience was gathered, and validating that you have the 21 hours of training, which again in this particular instance is very easy because we are the REP, and you simply submit the evidence that you have completed our certification process. Once you say submit for your application, PMI have 10 days to review it for completeness. So again, they are going to review it, they are going to validate it, they are going to add up the hours, and where appropriate, you're going to get selected for the random audit. But let's hope that you don't get selected for the random audit, because that is simply a delay. Not that there's going to be any issues with passing your audit, but it's a delay. So we get the nod, and then we make our fee payment. What does it cost to take the ACP certification exam? I'm going to refer you to www.pmi.org because the fee structure varies depending on whether you are a PMI member or not a PMI member, whether you're taking a paper-based exam, whether you're taking an online-based exam, and the fees are subject to change over time. So again, www.pmi.org. You will review the table and you will determine what the appropriate fee is, and you will submit your fee. And then you're going to get your eligibility letter. I'm going to skip over these next two pieces because they're the audit process, so let's follow the happy path first. You pay your fees, and it's in the hundreds of dollars. It's not the thousands of dollars, but it is hundreds of dollars that you need to pay for your fee. And then you have up to 1 year from when you get your eligibility letter to take the exam itself. And on the off chance that you don't pass it the first time, but I have confidence by going through this nugget series and with the experience you already have in hand, you will pass your exam the first time. So let's not stress too much about it. But if you don't pass the exam the first time, you have up to 3 times to pass the exam. You can try and challenge for the exam 3 times in the same year. And if you don't pass that, not ever going to happen, but if you don't pass that, you then have to take a year's holiday, and then you're welcome to try again. And then finally, you take your exam, you pass it, and to maintain your credential, there's a 3-year certification cycle. So again, if you're familiar with PMI and their PDU process associated with the PMP, PMI follows the same principle for the ACP. Every 3 years, you need to provide proof back to PMI that you're continuing to advance your knowledge of Agile delivery, Agile project management processes. So for every 3 years, you need to submit to PMI that you have achieved 30 PDUs, professional development units, in Agile. And that's a key understanding for the PDUs to maintain your ACP certification is all of your PDUs, all of your hours of professional development have to be in the Agile area. Now again, if you are an existing PMP, you're very familiar with the PDU process, and you're familiar with the fact that a PDU is approximately equivalent to 1 hour. So if you go to a 1-hour seminar that is appropriate for certification, you will get 1 PDU credit for that, and you submit your credit to PMI, and it gets counted against the 30 that you require, again, provided that it's in the Agile area. And finally, if you are a PMP and collecting your PDUs for your PMP, the same PDUs can be used for credit for both your PMP and your Agile. So if you go to an Agile seminar, you can submit that PDU credit for both your PMP and get a 1 PDU credit for that 1-hour seminar against your PMP, and get an equivalent, an additional 1 PDU credit for that same hour seminar against your ACP recertification. But if you went to a seminar that was focused exclusively on traditional project management practices, that PDU, that hour, would only be eligible for your PMP recertification. So, standard process, 90 days from start to finish, 10 days for PMI to validate, you pay your fees, you have up to 1 year to take and pass your exam, and then every 3 years to maintain your ACP accreditation, you must submit to PMI 30 PDUs of evidence that you're maintaining your training, your credentials. Finally, I'm going to say the unhappy path. If you're one of the ones selected for the random audit, PMI will notify you, and then you have 90 days to submit the evidence, the material that they're looking for, which again is basically going to be contact details, further validation that again in 2008 the 600 hours of traditional project management was achieved on this project, and you can call my boss at this phone number to validate that. Once you do your submission, PMI has an additional 5 to 7 days to review your audit materials, and then again the expectation you will get your eligibility letter, and then you come back into the happy path process where you have 1 year to complete your exam. So you have your certification letter, and it's time to take the exam. Again, you have up to 1 year to do this. Taking the exam is fairly straightforward. Obviously, you need to know your materials, you need to have the confidence, but that's what you're going to get from completing this Nugget series. You're ready to take the exam. It's as simple as contacting the Prometric CBT site. So go to prometric.com, log on to their site, have your eligibility letter details in hand, search for the test site most appropriate, I'm going to say nearest to you, but most convenient to yourself, and then simply select and schedule the date and time that you want to take the exam, show up, take the exam, get your certification, and you're in business. And this is again the norm for how most people will take, schedule, and pass the exam, recognizing that although Prometric sites are very, very widely distributed internationally, there will be locations that it is just not logical, not feasible, not reasonable to get to a Prometric site. So PMI have consideration for taking a paper-based exam, and there are a number of criteria that you must achieve, you must satisfy to be eligible to take the paper-based exam. But generically speaking, if there is not a Prometric site within 186 miles of your home, and I'm saying this based on U.S. measurement, or for those of us who are not U.S. based, where did that very odd 186 mile radius came from? Well, it comes from probably a more round number. If you're not within 300 kilometers of a Prometric site, you are most likely eligible to take a paper-based exam. I'm not going to go through all of the details for submitting the application for paper-based and going through the process for paper-based. Again, that's all available at pmi.org. Either take it electronically at a Prometric site or take it paper-based based on the PMI credentials. And finally, a point of interest at this point in time, the exam is available in English only at this time. So in 2012, when I'm recording this Nugget series, the exam is available in English only. In all likelihood, over time, PMI will expand that into other languages. But at this point in time, if you're going to take your ACP, be prepared for going into the exam center, picking up the piece of paper, and dealing with the exam in English. And finally, and probably most importantly, is what is the exam format? What are you going to see when you go into your Prometric Center to take your exam? You're going to see 120 questions. You have 3 hours to complete the 120 questions, which mean you have 90 seconds or a minute and a half per question. And may not sound like a lot, but very few of the questions are going to take the full minute and a half to answer. So therefore, you actually should be able to take this exam at a fairly leisurely pace, recognizing that all of the questions are multiple choice, so you don't have to sit there and compose long essay answers. You're going to read the question carefully. You're going to read all of the possible responses carefully, and you're going to pick the best response. And very few of the questions are probably going to take the degree of thought that's going to take the full 3 hours to get, or the full 90 seconds to take the full 3 hours for the exam. Quick point of interest, and I'm not going to focus on this a lot. There are 120 questions on the exam. Only 100 of the 120 are actually scored to determine your pass. And there's another 20 questions that are deemed to be pre-test questions. They're additional questions that PMI are evaluating to continue to determine their appropriateness for adding to the exam bank in the future. So be aware of the fact that there may be some questions in the exam that just may not feel right. They just, oh, that's an odd one. I wonder what's going on. In all likelihood, that odd one may be a pretest question that is being evaluated, and based on the response that you and everybody else gets at the pass rate, that the etc. just isn't within the expected norm from PMI, it's going to be removed from the database. So again, I'm saying this because the bottom line is you need to read all 120 questions carefully and focus on getting them all right. But if you get one or two that just don't feel right, chances are they're of the pretest. Don't let one or two oddball questions throw your confidence. Say, oh, I don't have any confidence in that one. Maybe I'm not an ACP. Yeah, you are an ACP, and it may well be a poorly worded pretest. So again, don't let any odd question drive your confidence down. You're going to do just fine. You're going to get through all 120 in the allotted time, and you're going to get your pass. So what is a pass? PMI does not officially release the passing grade for any of their certifications, but generically speaking, around 70%, so 70 of the 100 scored questions need to be right to get a pass. Now, another key thing to be aware of as you're going into your ACP exam is all of the questions on the ACP are what I would describe as theory-based. They're going to be textbook-based. They're going to be, according to industry best standards in Agile project delivery, the correct answer is C. And I drive that home because a lot of the questions in other PMI certifications, specifically on the PMP certification, are experience-based questions. If I was an active project manager and I was presented with this scenario, what is the best answer? You'll get none of those experience-based questions in the ACP. They're all going to be theory-based questions. And how are these questions distributed? How are they defined? PMI have said approximately 50% of all of the questions, so approximately 60 of your 120 questions are going to be questions around Agile tools and techniques, and the other 50%, the other 60 of your questions are going to be around Agile knowledge and skills. So you're going to say, well, what's a tool and technique? What's a knowledge and skills? Don't worry about it. That's what this Nugget series is going to review. We have 40 more nuggets in this series that's going to give you everything you need to know to understand the 50% tools and techniques and the 50% knowledge and skills. But as a bit of a preview to what's coming in those future nuggets in this series, tools and techniques, again, 50% of all of your questions, so 60 of your questions, are going to be related to how do we communicate in an agile way? How do we plan, monitor, and adapt in an agile way? How do we do agile estimating? How do we do agile analysis and design? And yes, there is analysis and design in Agile. The difference from traditional analysis and design and Agile analysis and design is we do our Agile analysis and design incrementally, iteratively, so we do just enough analysis and design to deal with the business requirements in the current iteration and nothing more. We absolutely will be focused on discussing how we ensure quality in an agile principle. So again, agile is all about quality. As a matter of fact, I believe an agile development approach is going to deliver higher quality, not lower quality. It's not a wild, wild west where we simply start coding. If we follow proven agile principles, and we will because we're ACP, we will absolutely drive very high quality into our project. We will talk about agile soft skills, how we negotiate with their team, how we negotiate with the business, and how we keep our agile projects on track. We'll talk about value-based prioritization. What comes next? How do we select the stories? How do we select the business functionality that's going to go into the next iteration? Agile project management is not without risk, so we'll focus on what is agile risk management. Metrics are absolutely key within our iterations. And we'll introduce terms like burn up, burn down charts, and velocity. Again, all agile terms that you've probably heard of. We'll discuss all of that in future nuggets in this series. And finally, the concept of value stream analysis, doing exactly what it is that's appropriate to deliver value to the business. So those are the type of discussions we're going to have in our forthcoming nuggets around tools and techniques. And the remaining 50% of your exam questions, again another 60, are going to be around knowledge and skills. Now PMI have broken our knowledge skills down into level 1, level 2, and level 3. And the level 1, 2, and 3 follow fairly standard process. Level 1 are intro, basic, level 2 are medium, and level 3 are truly the harder ones, the advanced agile principles. But the good news is, although there's a significant number of advanced skills for agile development, 13 of them, they're only going to constitute 5% of your total exam questions. So again, if you're relatively new to this agile world and you're going to say, oh, I'm not ready to take an exam based on level 3 skills, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You will understand what those 13 level 3 skills are through this nugget series. But again, if some of them are still foreign to you, don't let it erode your confidence that you're going to do well in your certification itself, because they're only going to be 5% of the total questions. So 5% of 120 questions isn't a large number, so therefore it's not going to truly impact your ability to take and pass, where the majority of it is going to be broken into the 18 skills around the intro and the 12 skills around the medium. Again, we'll go into much more detail as to what's in each of the levels of knowledge and skills, but level 1 skills include things like active listening, understanding the Agile Manifesto, a key discussion we're going to have in the next nugget in this series, assessing and incorporating community and stakeholder values, brainstorming techniques, building empowered teams, coaching and mentoring teams. So again, stuff that should be existing knowledge that we have as being trained, experienced professionals with 3,500 hours in project delivery shouldn't get a lot of challenge from any of the level 1, the 18 specific skills that PMI have identified, and to a large extent the level 2s. Again, something we should be able to pass quite easily and will be fully covered in this nugget series. What are the agile frameworks and terminology? What's the difference between Scrum and Kanban and Extreme? How do we develop good business cases? How do we deal with continuous process improvement, a key agile process? How do we do appropriate facilitation in an agile environment? What is the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct? That form we had to agree to and sign. There will again be some questions on your PMP in the 12 skills around level 2 associated with behaving ethically. And finally, level 3, the 13 skills that may be stressing you out, but again, I'm going to stress, don't worry about them. What are the agile practices? How do we control limits for agile projects? What are the agile games? And specifically, I'll reference the agile estimating games. How do we ensure we have appropriate application of the different agile methods and approaches. So again, all details that will be covered in the remaining 40 nuggets in this series. With this in hand, you're ready to go complete the remaining nuggets in the series and then go and complete and pass your ACP exam. This concludes our nugget on preparing for understanding the ACP Agile Certified Practitioner exam. In this nugget, we talked about the qualifications. You need 3,500 hours of experience in project management and Agile, of which 2,000 hours are traditional PM or general project delivery experience, and an additional 1,500 hours, and this is a plus, of Agile experience. We need to have a high school graduate, and we need to have 21 hours of Agile training, of which this Nugget series qualifies 100% of the expectations for Agile training. You submit your application online. You go to pmi.org. You submit your application. You provide the evidence of when and how you've gathered your 2,000 hours of PM experience and your 1,500 hours of Agile experience. You show them evidence that you have completed this Nugget series. You submit your application. You get accepted by PMI. You go to a Prometric website, assuming you live within 300 kilometers of the site. You go in, you schedule a date and time, and you pass your exam, recognizing that the exam has 120 questions, of which 100 are graded. You have 3 hours, and the expectation is a passing grade is around 70%. All questions are multiple choice, and the questions are going to be a combination of validating that you have the knowledge of the Agile tools and techniques, 50% of the questions or 60 of the questions, and the other 50%, the other 60 questions are going to be around Agile skills and Agile experience, all of which you're going to get the knowledge through this Nugget series. This concludes our Nugget on the PMI ACP exam. I hope this module has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.